And joining us today on the MetaShare guest line is Brian and Natalie Burton. Brian is a college basketball analyst for ESPN, has been a longtime college basketball coach at various levels. He was an assistant coach on the D1 level with stops at UTEP, Fresno State, Utah. He also spent 5 years as a head coach in junior college. Natalie, his wife, she coached college volleyball for a number of years, and together they have started Uprise Athletics Group. Natalie also owns and runs a volleyball club in Texas. I'm thrilled to welcome on the Burtons to the Unpacking It podcast. How you guys doing? Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, we're doing well. Excited to do this, our first one together. So we're excited to team up.
Absolutely. Well, welcome and glad to have you both. Before we jump into what all you guys are doing now and hear about your journey and your story, it's basketball season. I know you're more of a college basketball guy, but we are right moments before the NBA Finals this week, and so I'm curious your thoughts on the matchup with the Warriors and the Celtics.
Yeah, exciting matchup. I mean, if you're a basketball person, you're pretty much a basketball person. It doesn't matter what level.
That's
NBA,
right. I'm there with you.
NBA, of course, being the highest level, but excited for the two teams, the best two defensive teams in the NBA statistically, which is cool that normally that doesn't happen. Obviously, the Warriors are really entertaining offensively, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are two of these duos, along with Marcus Smart and the vintage Al Horford. So it'll be fun. Definitely the NBA's glad Boston's back in, but I'm going to go with the Warriors and think that they're going to bring some of that championship magic back.
Yeah, I got to lean Warriors myself, but I noticed you were tweeting about Boston Celtics head coach Ime Udoka, and the fact that he has taken this team to the NBA Finals. Hopefully, will start gaining some hype and momentum. But even that the average basketball fan probably doesn't even know his name, how to say his name, or to put into context what he's done. But as your appreciation of basketball coaches, what do you make of what's been able to be accomplished by Ime this year?
Yeah, incredible job. I mean, at one point, I think they were, an 11 seed in the season, regular season, not playing well, trying to figure it out. They're thinking about trading Jaylen Brown. The two can't coexist. And for Udoka's credit, Brad Stevens, who's kind of the golden child, if you will, for college and NBA for a long time, wasn't able to take the Celtics where they are now. So I think the fact that they're defensively the best team in the league says a lot about him. And then he's gotten these two stars to gel. They did make some great trades right before the trade line. Derek White was a big pickup for them. But I think he's done an outstanding job. Most people don't know his name. Most people still think it's probably Brad Stevens, the coach, or they just don't know. They're just like, hey, the Celtics are good. We'll talk about how good of a coach Curry is and some of these other guys. But, yeah, he deserves his due, and he's engaged to Nia Long. So you got to give him credit for that too.
That's right. Absolutely. So, no, it's it's an unbelievable story that Brad Stevens moves up to the front office. And it's just, I'm fascinated by it all. And the fact that they're in the finals, it makes for a great matchup. And then to see the Warriors back, of course, is going to be fun. Well, all right, let's talk about you two and the journey that you both have been on from a coaching standpoint. And now, really being in business together and the excitement and the challenges of that as well. But let's go back. Natalie, why don't you fill us in on how the two of you met and how God brought you two together?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was coaching at Midwestern State volleyball, and Brian was coaching at Abilene Christian for basketball. And that was back when we used to be in the same conference. So we were playing at Abilene Christian, and I was wandering the hallways looking for my pregame caffeine fix, Diet Coke. And I asked if he could show me where a Coke machine was. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got you. And took me on a whole journey around the building and to another building. And he couldn't get in the building. And I was like, do you even work here? Like, are you a player? But he was like, no, I'm new. My keys don't work. But I had to get back to my warm-up. So after warming up the kids, I get back to the sideline, and my players had said that there was a guy who left a Diet Pepsi on the sideline for me. So he just happened to be in the hallway after the game. Yeah. And gave me his business card, and, I emailed professional. And then we dated for a little bit and took us a while to figure it out. We were, both coaches trying to climb the ladder and figure out our careers. And so we really were just really good friends for a long time, for about 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
I mean, somebody I talk to every day, like we just had very similar lives in the college coaching world, minus the difference in sport. But I mean, just really leaned on each other, really kind of became best friends. And then when I moved back to Texas, we figured it out.
And then when I proposed, I finally got the Diet
Yeah.
Coke, got a customized Diet Coke that said, "Will you marry me?" on it.
Get out of
Get
here.
on one knee. Yeah. They still have it to this day. Yeah. Yep.
How did that
So they got-
happen? How did you do that? That's cool.
You know what? They have I think it's like shareacoke.com. One of her players told me about it. So I was going to do it during the season. So she was a head coach during volleyball season. I was going to do it and show up and do it in front of her team. But then it just so happened she gave me that idea. And then she has a twin sister who's just got the head coaching job at UC Riverside. So she's a first-time Division I head coach, her twin sister. And so I knew she had to be a part of the process. So holidays, everybody was together. Got this customized "Will you marry me" Coke bottle and said, "Hey, I finally got the Diet Coke you asked for a long time ago." And she said yes.
Tremendous. That's awesome. I'm a sucker for a good proposal story. So that's fantastic. I love that.
We got to talk to Coke about some sponsorship. We're not the NIL level anymore, but some sponsorship. We got to talk to Coke about that.
You better a commercial. Do a commercial like that. That's pretty special. I know for you, Brian, the number of opportunities, yet also the number of changes that you've had throughout your coaching career. It's been a lot. And as sports fans, we don't always recognize the amount of change and going from one school to the next to find that right spot. And so take us into the journey, and Natalie, you can kind of add to this as well. But how, really, how did your passion for coaching keep you going, and how did your faith in God and His leading keep you going from stop to stop? And just kind of take us into the journey a little bit.
Yeah. So if I was to say statistically or analytically, I think I've worked at 6 different Division I's, 5 years of junior college. It might have been 4 different junior colleges. I've lived in all time zones that there are in the United States. And then context for us, that's kind of what made us friends, is that we were able to go through these parallel journeys, in our faith walk kind of kept us going, even when I'm sure a lot of times we didn't want to. So that's definitely how a small part of how the God part of it all came through, because not only is there changes, but, it's challenging as an assistant because you're trying to climb the ladder and trying to figure out success. You're trying to align with your head coach and your staff. And then you're trying to find your own way in the mix of all that. So after we get married, our first 3 years of marriage, get this, we lived in 7 combined different cities. So the faith walk of that, we did long distance 3 times, some short periods, some for a full season. And it kind of has led to us to where we are now, which we'll get to, but I'll pass it to Natalie and just talk about her journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think for us and our relationship and just going through that journey, I know, like for me, going from being an assistant to my first head coaching job, and that's when we really started building our friendship. And I think, like you talked about, we had these parallel lives. He was the assistant, I was a head coach. And so his struggles with head coaches and my struggles with my assistants and, not having that support, I think we just really balanced each other and like gave each other perspective and just kept reminding each other of, like what we're in it for and like what the bigger purpose was. And, that God truly had us in this place for a reason. And I think, we were definitely in each other's lives at the perfect time and kind of needed that.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how you get through coaching without it, because it's definitely, you just get tested in so many ways, from moving to not making very much money to, sometimes working for a boss or with a staff that you just don't feel like you fit in and you align. And let's be honest, the faith part of sports is not celebrated amongst staffs traditionally. There are those unique pockets where you're like, okay, I work for Tony Dungy. This is great, right? But you don't always work for a Tony Dungy type of guy, So that part can be really hard because there's a lot of time spent together and you become the people you're around. And there's also a lot of expectation to win, which is the bottom line of sports, which sometimes the faith part of it can get lost.
What did you learn through that? What was your takeaway from that as you reflect back?
You go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think just, people in your life that constantly remind you as you're going through those challenges. I think that there's a lot of time. I mean, it's, like you said, it's such a challenging career that I don't know how people get through it without knowing that God's in control and like he has the ultimate, say on things. I think it's just very stressful. A lot of it's out of our control. I mean, our jobs are predicated on these 18 to 21, 22-year-old kids, and, they're away from home for the first time and you just have so much responsibility with them. But I mean, it definitely is one of those you have to kind of let go of the control and just trust. And otherwise the stress will just eat you alive. And so it was probably the first time in my career where I really just had to let go and hand it over and be like, all right, like as the blows come, like injuries, kids quitting, kids, I mean, whatever it was, switching jobs, like just really give it up and be like, all right, God, wherever you want me to be, like however you want me to handle these situations. I think, Brian was so great at always reminding me like it's all part of helping these kids navigate their life too at this point. Like it's not just about volleyball. It's not just about winning. But we're really in their lives to help them learn how to live life the right way and how to handle situations. And like there's guidance for them. And so I think when I saw it more as like, that was my purpose and my role, not just the pressure of winning and recruits. And, like that stuff comes and, we're great at what we do. So it's going to happen, but to really just feed into, our purpose of really helping these young people grow up and learn how to do life.
I probably failed at it more and had to fail forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it was almost a constant battle of what the godliness of what you hope for and then what the industry standard is. And it's just a constant tug of war. So there's moments when I can point to my career and say, I did this really great and I was so fate led and this. And then there's other moments where I can be like, I didn't win that battle, but I learned from it and it helped me win the next one. So I think it's constant. It's really a challenge because you're working to do such a good job by what you – and I don't think you have to get to a point where you have the peace. I think we have that now. And I think the older and the more life you go through and you kind of realize you belong, I think it's different. But when you're trending up and you're trying to prove that you belong and you're trying to get the next job or you're trying to get that position that says like, hey, this guy's good, you kind of find yourself looking around and say, well, what is the norm in our industry? And the norm is not usually faith-led. And so I try to seek out faith leaders that I felt like and other teammates in the journey that you felt like you could lean on. But it's not as easy as what people would think. And I think there's more, for me at least, there was a lot of failing forward of just like, all right, I didn't do that well, or I didn't get that right, or I don't want to ever represent myself this way in any situation again. I'm going to always make sure I'm doing it to the audience of one and I'm accountable there. And if my head coach doesn't like it, then unfortunately, then we'll just have to disagree on that one. So I think you kind of learn that as you go, but your alignment when you're young and single, you just kind of like, just give me a job. I'll work all the hours. I'll get it done. I'll show you. But then as you kind of get older, and again, seven different cities in our first 3 years of marriage, you start realizing like, well, wait a minute, this person may not align with how I believe, not so much philosophically basketball only, but just life-wise. You want to do life with other people that are similar to you. So I think that stuff kind of comes as you go. And now do it as best as I can to be an advocate for coaches and working with a company, Rising Coaches, and helping young coaches develop and even older coaches, just try to speak that life into them because it's such a hard lens to relate to if you haven't done it.
Absolutely. And I would even say a lot of our listeners can resonate with you too, even beyond the coaching industry. It's just day-to-day work environments and wanting to be a light, wanting to follow Jesus and stand up for biblical truth. But at every turn, people are pushing against you, the enemy's pushing against you.
Yep.
And in order to stay faithful, it's a daily walk with the Lord and relying on him each day. So, and failing forward and learning. So I appreciate you sharing all that. And so levels of college basketball, different volleyball experiences, coaching in different environments. And then you guys experience the multiple cities in such a short amount of time.
Yep.
So where did that leave you at the end of those few years? We're chasing these different jobs. Where did you guys land and take us into what that process was like to set you up for what you're now doing?
Yeah, I'll go first on this and let Natalie be the closer on this one. So I think for me, so our last stop, I was at, so my last 5 years of my career, it's like promotion, job rate or job increase, promotion, new title, promotion. So you're climbing, you're ascending, and it's exciting. And it's like, oh, he's the next such and such. And you don't get caught up in that, but it's an exciting time. And then the last 2 seasons, I found myself in between jobs, looking for a job, like, wait a minute, what's going on? So for me, after that first time getting let go in a very transactional part of college basketball, I knew that I wasn't all the way right with God and how I was doing. I wasn't the same person in the light that I was in the dark. And I just felt really compelled to actually take another step in my faith. So I was at a men's conference with my dad and decided to get baptized, something I wanted to do prior, but just kind of always put it off. But I felt like God was like, hey, are you in or are you not? It's almost like coaching. We talk about kids being all in. And I was picking and choosing the parts of my life that I was going to let God be over. And the other parts, like, I got this part, God, so I don't necessarily need you here. And I wasn't as arrogant to say that, but in my mind, my actions were that. So that was the start of it for me, of just obedience, humility, and trust, the things that I needed to really focus on. And God really called me to those things. And so that led me to going to Indiana and being completely long distance from them, which after that season led me to saying, okay, God, I'm going to interview one more time for one place I think that's aligned. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to sit this year out and just see what you have for me. Because I knew stability was something that we both wanted at that time. We were praying for being in the same place. And you start realizing, is it worth it to be away, even though you love this game, at what cost, though, right? It's like Bible verse that talks about, what does it profit a man to gain the world if he loses his soul? And I wasn't losing my soul, but I was detached from what I said was my priorities, and how much longer were we going to have to do that? And so we had a significant phone call that happened during this time, which I'll pass it to Natalie to tell that part of the story.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, it was just, you asked, like, where did it leave us? I would just say very confused, very, just like, what's next, but yeah, it's
I'll say this real quick. So in that time period after I got baptized, I almost felt like I needed to leave college basketball. And at that time, Natalie was like, no, I think this is what you're supposed to be doing, which I think is also the cool part about our faith and how we lean in a marriage on each other, because she was pretty adamant, like, this is not the time for you to leave. And I felt like I wanted to leave, but it wasn't it. So when she was so adamant that, okay, this is something you still need to do, it made it pretty clear to me that maybe it is going to be harder and this is going to strengthen our marriage and it is a test of faith. But there's a blessing on the other side. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think that a lot of the tough situations we went through, whether it was moves, like for me, getting out of college coaching and being a stay-at-home mom, like that was not something I always dreamed of doing. But, I think when you are being long distance from him and having to take care of the kids by myself, but in those moments, it's like, it's just so temporary, and I just had to keep reminding myself, like, I work a lot and I'm not going to be a stay-at-home mom forever. So like, if it is just for 9 months or a year and a half. Like, this is time I should cherish because, very soon times will change and I'll be working again and I won't have this time. So as different and uncomfortable as those situations were, like, just finding the blessings and the things to cherish in those moments and just keeping a bigger perspective that time is just so temporary. And so, yeah.
So fast forward, pregnant happens during COVID pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is a good thing. We're not getting divorced. Some people are getting divorced during this time. So we're not, we're living. So for the last 2.5 years prior to this August, we lived in my parents' house.
Oh, wow.
And her parents' house for 2.5 years. Now, she did it solely. I had an 8-month stand where I was in Indiana working at university there, Division I IUPUI, coaching. So here we are in the basement. And then it comes to find out later, I didn't get that other job. We choose not to do the long distance thing in Indiana again. So here I am on unemployment. We're having a baby. We're having our third, and we prayed for that. And we're driving back from Indiana, picking up my car, and we get a phone call from the doctor. We're 11 weeks into pregnancy, and we find out that there's a 90% chance that our child may have Down syndrome, which is not a phone call you expect to get. So Natalie's crying. I'm sleeping in the car to start the phone call. She hands me the phone. She gets out. She's crying on the curb. I listen to the doctor. I'm kind of half awake, and I'm like, okay. So then I go out, and the first thing I said was, you're not going to have to do this alone. If I have to leave college basketball, then I will, if that's what's meant to be. I think that was the first moment, even though I didn't really know what I was saying. It was so natural that God kind of spoke through me, and it was just like, this is not about college, because I knew her fear was doing it alone. She had just retired from college coaching to do the family thing, but never planned on being a stay-at-home mom forever. So I think the idea of college basketball, you're always gone. You're always on the road recruiting. You're always on the road scouting or competing or whatever it may be, that you do feel like a single parent for large times of the year. So that's how it started. And then we had our biggest leap of faith and journey of faith that's made us a lot stronger. We chose to proceed with pregnancy. That was the big decision. The doctor said we had to come back and, are you going to keep pregnancy or not? Which 85% of people do not, we found out later, which is a large percentage of people. So that was, it weighed on us. It was definitely it felt like we were the most divided we had ever been for that 2-3 days, because it was almost like I didn't want to push her pride. I didn't want to make this bigger than what it was, but I also didn't want to leave her alone, but I wanted to give her space. And so it was a very awkward time. And then I'm looking at myself as a man like, well, I don't have a job. We're living in my in-laws' basement. I don't know if I'm supposed to be coaching college. I don't know if I can provide for the family I have, let alone someone who may have special needs. So it was a lot of stuff going on in that. And Natalie actually grew up not as a Christian. And so there was a lot of things to unpack from her childhood. It's like, well, you deserve for this to happen. So I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, definitely the most challenging, I think, moment ever in life. Probably getting that phone call and figuring out how to navigate that. Yeah, it was crazy. But
one part about it too is that we were so when you have kids and you live in a basement, you're pretty much always with your kids. And our kids weren't in school then. So it's like the timing of it, we had this, I don't know, 2-day road trip from Indiana driving back to Colorado where we had nothing but time and each other, time to think, but also it was like time in silence, which was also kind of, so anyway, sorry, just for context.
Yeah, just a lot of silence and crying in the car together. Like, honestly, not even really knowing what to say and what to expect. Yeah, very challenging time. But I just remember a couple moments, him saying, first thing he's saying is like, I can get out of college basketball. You don't have to do this alone, and just feeling like, okay, like that's one of my biggest fears. And that was one of the scariest things. And then, the second biggest thing is I just remember in the car too, just Brian saying, it was like that reminder, this life is so temporary and it's not our own. So if God chose for us to have this child, and sure, it might bring extra struggles and challenges, but like, it's so temporary. Like, we feel like, and I mentioned it before, like being away from each other from 9 months is so long, but like in the scheme of our life, like that's so little. And compared to eternity, like this life is so little. And just kind of that reminder of, this time is very short, and if that's what he's called us to do, and it's like, he has a reason, he has a purpose, and can we really trust him in the scariest of times when we just absolutely disagree and don't want to, yeah, it was definitely the most challenging. And I always share the story about just having the faith to like look to him for the answers and to not try to figure it all out ourselves. Like, the scariest thing about Down syndrome is you don't know to what extent.
Right.
It could be very severe, it could be more mild. There's just, you don't know any of it until you hit milestones. So you wait till to see if she has, troubles with her heart or hearing or eyesight, or, there's just so many things, and you don't ever know until you hit the next milestone or so you're just kind of always waiting and hoping and praying that, it's healthy and she's good and she can walk and she can do this and she can eat right, or, we were in the NICU for 20 days because she wasn't able to eat by herself. And, just, so it's just it's just one of those though, where it's like, you really have to let go of the control and just live in the moment and just trust God to provide and give us the strength and give us the, whatever we need to help this little girl be her best. But she's been a blessing and she's perfect, and we love her dearly. So
wow. Well, man, I appreciate you both sharing about that, because that's so inspiring and just an incredible perspective and how God moved in that. And Brian, you mentioned, being the feeling the pressure of being a man in that situation. How did God meet you in that place of feeling less than and confused and wondering about all that?
Yeah, good question. I think that was probably the most. We've had our challenging times before, but it's totally different when you have other people that you love depending on you to be your best self. And I think it's almost like you have to be broken down to be built back up. And I think part of the whole idea of us being in the basement, like metaphorically, you're below the surface, right?
Wow.
And you're at this low point. And I felt like I was at a low point. And to be honest, there's a lot of parts about college athletics that are hard to deal with when it comes to certain narratives. Like, let's say, whether you're Draymond Green, even though he's a really good player, like there's a narrative around him that says who he is, or even somebody as great as Curry or somebody as great as Kobe Bryant. Like, everyone has this narrative, and there's a part of it that they want to change. Right now, Steph wants to change him being in the top 10, and he's never had a finals MVP or whatever it is, right? And that's what makes great players great and great athletes great. But as people, we're not always equipped for handling those narratives, right? And you start listening to sometimes what you think people are saying you are, or what the perception of what you maybe are. So I think for me, God was just really broke me down and just be like, no one else's perception matters. I'm the perception that matters. And part of how he did that, I had a couple friends I reached out to. Both are in coaching, both extreme men of faith. One was with me. He actually coaches in the NBA. I won't say his name, but he was just great because I knew he would always give me the real, and I know he cares, but I knew he's a faith-led conversation, right? You're not talking to somebody who is not aligned in that part of you, because you have to be careful with those moments where you're really fragile and who you allow to share with, because you want them to come from a certain place to build you back up and be wise counsel. So he was one, and the other, and he gave me some really tough things to think about, which was, are you going to be able to afford whatever may come with that? Which at the time, I don't have a job, so I can't afford anything, And, are you going to be able to balance the time between your other two daughters and a child that has special needs? He's like, my experience, one person, they struggle with that, So he gave me some of that, but he's like, whatever you decide, God's going to be with you either way. This is when we're making the decision. And the other friend was great because he just kind of helped me because he has 2 sons that have autism. And he helped me tremendously as a college basketball coach. He was just great in giving a perspective of, and he wears it just with you wouldn't even know it. Like, you don't know he's not affected. Like, his life isn't different. And I think that was the fear. The fears were, is our life going to be different than what we thought it was going to be? Because naturally we're selfish by nature, right? We want to do it the way we think we should do it.
That's right.
So that was one. Another was, can we afford it? That was natural. And then there's a natural part of it is like, well, what are people going to think? And I think that's where God stripped all that away from us. And like Natalie was saying, it hit me at that time, like, this life is temporary. Like, are we living this life for other people? Or are we really living it to honor God? And the funny part, the ironic part about our marriage, and when we got married, our mission statement was, we had to pick a mission statement, was to shine God's light through our marriage. And we thought, like, oh, that sounds so good. It's going to be great. But really, what we've learned in our almost 5 years now, in June 23rd, is that the light shines through the tough stuff when it's dark. That's when God's light really has an opportunity to shine, because otherwise people just think you have it together. They don't know. So Kobe Grace is our daughter's name, named after Kobe Bryant, who you have in the background. She's KOBI. Natalie's from California. Yeah, Natalie's from California originally. When Kobe passed, that was her favorite player. When Kobe passed, he definitely was somebody I looked up to post-career, even more than when he played. I didn't like the 24 Kobe, or excuse me, the 8 Kobe. I did like 24 Kobe.
Yeah, it's fair.
He grew on me a lot.
I got my 8 hanging jersey in my other office.
Nice.
I got the Kobe 8 in the other office.
With the pro. But the retirement Kobe was my favorite Kobe of all. And that's the Kobe that I strive to be more like all the time, because he's such a giver back to the game. He's such a servant. He's always celebrating other people's successes. He is all about it. He was all about his family. I'm a girl dad. He made girl dad the coolest thing ever. There was no such thing before. So I say all that to say, I think that knowing that it wasn't about us and just making it about God. And he's like, I wouldn't set you up if I thought you were going to have a child, or if I made you to have a child with special needs, then I know you're special parents. He kind of gave me that confidence, gave us that confidence. And I think ultimately, like, are you really doubting yourself because I made you? That was part of his thing. And then are you doubting my plan for you because I know what I'm doing and you've never known what you're doing? So I think that part kind of helped me get out of my own way and just be like, you know what? I'm just focusing my eyes on him and focusing our walk on him. And I think in our mission to give hope and shine God's light, Kobe is like the ultimate secret weapon for that, because people can think you have it all together and they're like, well, you don't really know what our story is like or our challenge is like. And she's a constant reminder every day of what really matters in life. And I think that's the part. She's amazing with our daughters, our older 2, 5, 3, and 1. Kobe's 1. And they just they adore her. She's definitely just the part of our family for all of us that keeps us bonded closer and just keeps us focused on what is really this whole thing is about for us. And so that's really how Uprise came about, which I'll let Natalie talk a little bit about that. And even in the logo, we made sure we're honoring Kobe and Down syndrome in that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So our motto or theme, slogan, for Uprise is Rise Beyond Limits. And I think that
this is a company that you started together. Just to fill our listeners in.
We do development, consulting, events, volleyball and basketball.
So basically youth sports and sports management. Those 2 things combined. 2 different arms, a lot of different things we do within it. Our first event was a Division I college basketball tournament last year in Charleston, South Carolina, where we had 4 Division I teams, and we hosted it in this Uprise event, and something that I never thought I would be doing, right? And it's kind of like the same concept of rising beyond limits. So it started there, and now we're doing more volleyball and helping young people kind of navigate their space and doing leagues and training. But within the logo.
We have like the front part of the U has the 3 arrows, which is the symbol for Down syndrome. So we just wanted that to be a part of it. And, you know, she's a constant reminder of just rising above limits, you know, and even in all that she's doing right now with her therapy and learning to walk and crawl and do all these things, you know, like we're just constantly loving her to keep pushing and be better than, you know, the limits put on her because she has Down syndrome. And so just any limits put on us, like as women, as minorities, as, you know, somebody with special needs, like just to keep rising beyond those limits.
That's awesome. All right. So this is your main focus now. And so Brian, where does that leave you in regards to coaching? And then how did the door open up for you to pursue broadcasting and ending up at ESPN as a college basketball analyst?
Yeah. So, great question. Something that was said earlier, I was going to comment on. I drew a blank. That's okay. It happens. So, I think there was something with the rise beyond limits that hit me that I was going to say, but I think the biggest thing for Kobe, so it was a NICU. That's what I was going to say. So 20 days in the NICU when she was first born. So she has to be able to get 75% of her feeding, like 2 or 3 times in a row in order for her to leave the hospital. But it's almost like a window. Like we were there 20 days, but if you get to 30 days and you're basically approaching surgery to put a tube in her at a newborn to be able to feed her to a tube. So she exhibited this mama mentality to get out of the hospital, and I'm there with her and just seeing her continue to fight because you basically don't have a lot of muscle tone when you're born with Down syndrome, when you have Down syndrome. So the little things that we take for granted, breathing, eating, that are so easy. And she would just get so tired that she couldn't breathe as much. So then she couldn't eat as much. So then she just wanted to go to sleep. So just seeing her exhibit that mama mentality way back then and get out of the hospital, and all of us were concerned again about that. It's like, we got a baby, but this is new. We're in the NICU. I'm sleeping in the NICU. So it just kind of instilled that rise beyond limits mentality. So at the time, my first year in the basement in the pandemic, I decided I wanted to try broadcasting, right? And I always kind of had a heart for it. It kind of grew the more I was in college basketball, the more I saw the guys on the other side and what they did and how cool their jobs were. Our ESPN is unpaused. But
nice.
The more I was watching, the more I was like, man, it's a cool job. Well, Natalie would actually tell me when she watched the games when we're on the road, especially early in my career when we were dating, she's like, these guys are terrible. They don't know the names. They don't know anything about your team. They keep saying this guy's name wrong. So I started paying attention to more of that. So a little bit of context there. And then so my younger brother, her sister is a Division I volleyball head coach. My younger brother is a Division I women's basketball head coach now. He was at a Division II. They're now going up. And so during Christmas break, I was calling around during the pandemic to everyone around this area. So we live in northern Colorado. So I'm calling everyone in this region I can talk to possibly do games. Division I, Division II, whatever, high school. Get nothing, partly because of the pandemic and nobody wants to. But the other part is hard in broadcasting is if you don't have any film, they don't know if you can do it or not. So it's like being a player, but I don't have any film, but I want to play. It's like, well, we don't have tryouts. So sorry. So I go home for Christmas break. I get to do a doubleheader with my younger brother's team. So 2 women's games, 2 men's games on a Saturday and Sunday. So now I have film, right? And I got to do it. And I had a couple people who I work with just watch it, critique it, and it felt natural, though. It felt fun. It felt natural. It felt like a way to honor the game in ministry, in a sense of honoring the job that guys do. There's not a lot of former coaches or former players or both that are in it. It's like NBA level is a lot of former players. But the college level, you have some guys who – and there's nothing wrong if you just did journalism. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly great to study that craft. But not a lot of people have coached and actually know how hard it is to win one game or to prepare for one game. So I had a heart to want to do it. And so that's where it started. And then fast forward the following year, just kind of kept following up with those same contacts. Well, the cool thing about sowing seeds is when you keep sowing them, they eventually harvest. So basically, I was able to do almost 30 games this year. One of my goals was to do some ESPN. I was able to do that. And then one of my goals was to do Mountain West games, and I was able to do that. So almost 30 games of ESPN Plus, and Mountain West games happened in my first full year, which was really cool just to be able to do that. And a small story on the Mountain West cool part is we had a marriage conference on a Saturday that I got an email that said, and a text that said, hey, you can do this game on this Saturday, but it's at 12 o'clock. And so a guy kind of checked me again and was like, okay, your priorities, you said your priorities are with your marriage. So are you going to do that? Or are you going to do this? Are you going to trust me that if this is for you, that I have you, or are you going to just be in such a hurry? And I remember taking a step back and saying, all right, I'm going to do this. And the marriage conference was great, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
That afternoon, I did an ESPN Plus game. And then later on, when I went to go do the Mountain West game, they were like, well, let's start you on the women's games, which is nothing wrong with that, but there's levels to the tiers. So that's kind of the entry level, where before it was a men's game. It's like, wait a minute, am I getting demoted? I haven't even started. I ended up doing the women's game, committing to it. The day before I was going to do the women's game, I got a call saying it was a reschedule and I got to do a men's game. So I do both those games. And the coolest part about this story is Wyoming, who I was doing games for, ended up being top 25, and they made the tournament. Boise State won the regular season. They also went to the tournament.
That's right.
And I was able to do – so there was a COVID rescheduled game, and I text our producer, and I said, hey, there's this game. Are we going to have the game? He's like, well, if, this station or this station doesn't pick it up, we'll have it. And he's like, and if we have it, you have the game. And in my mind, I'm like, there's no way this is reading right, because – not too long ago, I wasn't even doing this, and now I'm doing a first-place game in the Mountain West, a league that I used to coach in. And so it was one of those surreal moments where God was just like, again, if you make it about – God says to me, if you make it about me, I'll make it about you. And I think that's what I've continued to try to sow those seeds. And we have some podcast stuff that we've done now for 2 seasons, which has been really cool. Myself and a combination of others, some young guys in media that were coming up when I was a coach. One of them just got hired at Sports Illustrated, so he wasn't doing that before when we first started. Another one has his own company called Heat Check that's been really, really kind of blown up in college basketball. So, and then there's a couple others as well, but it's been really cool to do that stuff and see how that has led to now it's just compliments, because it's like, well, I was doing that stuff first, just wanting to give back to the game. And then next thing you know, you're broadcasting, and now it's like this validation of, well, wait a minute, like this guy's credible. Like we can actually listen to him, or even though I'm not necessarily, but it's just a cool place to be in when you make it about God, and he just kind of, makes your path clear.
Amen. Amen. Oh, it's tremendous. So, gosh, I love the story. And well, I guess, so then where does that leave you with coaching? Are you at peace about,
yeah.
Kind of where you're at now?
I think the Uprise is my coaching fix. I do get to prepare for games. I do get to be in the industry, right? I get to do a lot of cool things with the podcast to honor. So one of the big things for podcasts is like we get to celebrate everyone else as if they're on ESPN, even though it's not. But at least if you get a big win and you're at a mid or small college, who cares, right? Your people care, but you don't get any interview. You don't get any press from that. So we've tried to do more of that, which has been really cool. We've had, I think, crazy to think, in 2 years, we've had almost over 400 guests. We've had, I think, 25 million views on streaming. So we've had some success with it, which has been cool. So I do get to fix that way. And then the other parts I get through Uprise. So yeah, I think I'm good. College basketball was a great ride. I'm in my Kobe Bryant mode. But now I'm in the post chapter of serving the game and serving my family and serving the Lord.
Oh, that's awesome. And Natalie, have you then seen a change now post kind of on the road coaching Brian to now at home Brian?
Yeah, no. I love it. I tell him all the time that it is, I mean, he was a great college coach, and I think he had such a great way of connecting to players, and like just being really instrumental in their lives. But it's really cool to see him in this space where he just truly gets to follow his passion, and like wherever God leads him, wherever he's inspired, like he just goes, and it's like you say, you just throw stuff up and it sticks, and you're like, wow. I mean, you never would think it, but it's just really cool, yeah, to see how he can shine in this space in his own creations, and just following his own path and kind of just trusting himself and letting God lead him. Yeah, it's no cooler thing than to see somebody you love so much and believe in and respect, just have the opportunity to just shine, and for it to be received so well, and to just see him having a lot of success doing it and loving it. Like he's so much, I mean, he did a great job at like leaving work at work, but you can still tell, because it's a heavy weight that you always carry with you when you're a college coach. But just to see, I mean, his spirit is just so much lighter, and he's living in his passion and doing what he loves truly, and answering to one now. And it's just a different kind of just happiness and joy, and even drive, and wanting to continue to grow and do stuff. So yeah, no, it's really been cool to see.
She also likes the fact that I'm around a lot more to watch the kids, so that she can be a volleyball and do all her stuff.
That definitely matters too.
That helps. No, that's excellent. Well, Brian and Natalie, so awesome to meet you and hear your story and your heart. And gosh, very, very inspiring. And so appreciate you sharing your transparency, vulnerability, and humility. Definitely shine through. So thank you for that. And glad we were able to do it with both of you today. So this was a ton of fun for me.
Yeah, thanks for adjusting to that. That was not exactly what was planned, but the good Lord put it on my heart that I want to do more to, as a teammate, it's like, it's more fun when you get to do it with your team, and not very many platforms would allow for that. But when I knew of doing the background about this being a Jesus platform, I'm like, all right, this is the time for, and we got to tell our testimony at church on Easter Sunday, which was a cool first time to do it. It was we were a lot more nervous probably then, although it went well. But it's just a cool thing to be able to do it together and be able to show that it's cool to still be in athletics and care about sports, but also care about your family and care about being a good husband and making that a priority, because those things don't get celebrated as much as we probably would like. So I wanted to make sure that, I'm walking the walk and not just talking the talk. So I appreciate you allowing both of us to do this together.
Amen. Well, from one girl dad to another girl dad, keep it going. And awesome to hear about your three daughters and mainly Kobe, but excited for you guys and excited to see, new ways God continues to work in your lives, and encourage everybody to check out Uprise Athletics Group. And you can find out more about everything Brian and Natalie are up to. Gosh, thank you guys. We'll catch up again. But there's Brian and Natalie Burton joining us here on the Unpacking It podcast right here on the MetaShare guest line.